Welcome to today's session on Unit 2, History, Shogunate Japan. My name is Teresa Tapara. This program is being recorded so that you can use it for future reference. Today our learning intentions are: we're going to learn some new digital skills that specifically look at structured overviews of units. We're going to look at Wordles to start off with the basics, and then learn how to change this into a back channel. Well, they're going to look at place in time and use timelines in order to give students a clear idea of the continuity and changes in time. Then we're going to look at structured responses using Bubble Us, mind mapping and graphic organisers. Along the way, it would be great if we could gather and share resources so that we are not working alone on these C2C units, but utilising everyone else's skills and knowledge. The first tool or opportunity that I'm going to have a look at is to copy an outline into Wordle. Okay, Wordle is in order to do this, I would generally model it for students. So this is students who have had little experience with computers, or in a classroom where you may be not in a one-to-one situation. In the C2C resources, they give you a copy of the Japanese under the Shoguns unit overview. All you need to do is highlight that, and quite often I'll get the students to do that by using a wireless keyboard and giving it to them and asking, how would you copy this to somewhere else, so that they're learning as I go. So you hit Control C and copy that. I'll then get rid of this and we go into Wordle. Where it says paste in a bunch of text, just highlight that and Control V. You'll notice it takes all the text without the table formatting in there. We then click on Go. As we're doing this with the students, I'd be asking them questions of what they think I might need to be doing next, rather than me directly instructing them. That way they're actively participating in the learning process. That's why the structured overview then becomes them thinking about it rather than me telling them about it. Alright, this is the first one that it comes up with, which looks actually quite good, but they can randomize it until you find one that suits your class or what they want to look at. I do find the white backgrounds generally are better. So then what they basically do from this point on is that they would look at, because we've done this together, we've created the Wordle. I'd instruct them to identify the largest words in the image above. This would give them the main topic. Choose 3 words that relate to the main topic and write 3 sentences that describe how each of these words relates to the main topic. It's important then that once they've looked at this, and of course they're going to look at Japan, hopefully the keywords that they pull out of it are sources, Japan, and shogunates, or even individual. The power that comes from this is that they basically then get to discuss it. So that's setting up their prior knowledge before you go on to start the unit. I would then quickly go over the unit with them and set up when their assessment pieces are and give their course outline. That would be what I do with first timers. To add a little bit to it, and again depending on the types of resources you have available to them, you could go to something like this next section. Okay, so once again this is first timers, so you might have created, and if you notice the Wordle that we created, there are still basically the same keywords that stand out. Then I would get the students to go back through the whole 3-sentence process and then get them to create their own Wordle out of those 3 sentences and compare and contrast why the words are different, what big words stand out, and have that in-depth discussion. I would also be leading them in the discussion with the question process into the unit and the key learning intentions of the unit as they go. Okay, this is a more advanced strategy, and this is called a back channel. And what I get the students to do the first time that I do this with them is I give them a whole overview of how the lesson's going to progress. So today we're going to watch a video. And the video is an introduction on the unit directly from the C2C resources, so it's not something that I have to make. We're going to take notes in an answer garden. I then might ask the students, have you ever used Answer Garden before? Do you know what it is? I would explain to them what it is, and then from that we're going to create a Wordle and then write a summary. So we have 4 things that we need to achieve within this lesson. That gives the students a clear idea of where the lesson's going and what they need to have completed by the end of the lesson. So then what I would get to do with them is direct them to the answer garden, and it says, what do you think about Japan? From there, I would play them the video. The introduction to Shogunate Japan, which comes directly from the C2C.
Ohayo gozaimasu. That's good morning, or konnichiwa, if it's later in the day. My name is Makiko, and today my friend Yoshi and I are going to tell you all about your next history unit, Japan under the Shoguns. Here's Yoshi.
Hello everybody. Makiko and I are honored to share some of the fascinating history of Nihon, that's Japan, with you. I am sure you'll find it interesting. You're going to learn tales of famous warriors, fearless leaders, brave historical figures, and artisans and artists who helped to shape our nation.
In Unit 2 you will learn about the period of Japanese history from 794 to 1867. During this period, Japan changed from a nation ruled by emperors to the Shogunate period, which was characterized by the military rule until the eventual downfall of the Tokugawa Shogunate ended the Shogunate era.
Don't worry if Makiko is using lots of words that you don't know the meaning of. That's what you're here to learn. Makiko and I will be with you every step of the way, so keep an eye out for us throughout the unit for helpful tips and hints. You'll also find a glossary on sheet 2 that you can refer to if you forget the meaning of any of the new words. Notice that the words are listed in alphabetical order.
Shogunate Japan from 1192 to 1867 spans approximately 675 years of Japanese history. Shogunate Japan simply means the period of Japanese history when a shogun governed. A shogun is a military leader appointed by the emperor.
Shoguns were appointed by the emperor to defend the emperor's interests. But by the 12th century, the shogun had become the real ruler, and the emperor was the ruler in name only.
During this time, the shoguns progressively imposed a highly rigid feudal system on Japanese society and cut the country off from the rest of the world, banning trade and travel.
On penalty of death, Japan under the shoguns was a period of great.
Okay, this gives you a general idea. If you notice at the bottom of the screen, I had the Wordle up and was typing in answers as we go. If you have a look at the screen, these are the things that have come up. If a lot of the answers haven't come up and the things that I've typed in aren't there, the students need to hit this button and refresh their screen. Because the school laptops have slow refreshes, often the words as they type them in don't come up, and this distresses students usually. At this stage, I wouldn't get them to worry about their spelling, because it was also a key way of me then working out what I need to work on with their literacy levels and working out a glossary of key terms as well. Okay, so these are some of the key words that we've put in there. At the end of watching that video, which goes through then and explains their assessment as well, I would get them to hit the export button. When they hit the export button, underneath it lists either export to a Wordle or a Taggy-Do. I get them to go to a Wordle for starters, and once again it will transform them. Oops, sorry about that. It will transform it into a Wordle. Okay. Obviously, you're going to get someone at some stage who puts something in that's not appropriate. Once it's in the Wordle, you can actually click on it and remove it. Okay? And most of the time with the students, if you set up their parameters of what they have to do, how to be a good student, you generally don't get that in there, especially with grade 8s and maybe with the older students you might. It's at this stage where you might find that a word's been spelt wrong and that you might actually go in and change it. Okay, so far, because it was only me entering in the keywords, we don't have anything that stands out. But if you've got 22 students entering in the keywords into an answer garden, we should start to find that the word Japan and Shogunate actually increases in size. So once again, I get the students to save this, and you do that by using the snippet tool or making a screen capture shot of it. All these things are on the new builds in the state school system. I would then get them to save their Wordle. I have a set structure in my class of how you save files. They always have to save your name, so in this case Teresa Tapara, and it's an intro Wordle. This makes it easy when I want them to email me work, that I know whose the file is straight off, and then when I download it and save it, I don't need to go through typing in information. Plus, I like to teach the students how to save files in set formats. So my students are used to saving it as your name, and then I usually give them a title of the file. They can then save it and later on import it into a Word document. At this stage, once they've created this Wordle, I'd go back to the strategies that I showed you in the beginning and get them to write their 3 sentences. That way they've watched the whole overview, they have a general idea of where they're heading, what they're going to do. They've created their Wordle, they get to share and compare it with someone else, and they get to then write, so you have an idea of their writing skills and you get them to structure. By the time I use this process of a back channel and a Wordle, I will have instructed the students how to construct paragraphs using the teal process: topic, sentence, example, explanation, and then link or conclusion, depending on whether it's a standalone paragraph. I would expect them to create their sentences in that basic structure and write a paragraph that way. What strategies you use on top of it is dependent on how well or what level your class is at. Okay, so if we go back to it, I'd then say to the students, so today we watched a video. We now have a general idea of what our unit is going to be about. We took notes in Answer Garden. Okay, it's really difficult to often watch and listen and take notes. So we need to develop strategies that help us to do that a lot faster. We then created a Wordle, which is a visual image of the key words about this unit. These are the key things that you need to keep going back to, and we wrote a summary so that you could go home and tell your parents, today this is what I learnt, this is what we're going to do for the next 5 weeks. or however long you're doing the unit with the students. So it's important to go back and re-emphasize this information to them. All right. What I did on the iConnect session, or I had hoped to do on the iConnect session, is to list 3 good things about this strategy, 1 question about this strategy that you may or may not understand. What I'd like you to do is think about the good things or how you think you could utilize these strategies. If you have any questions about them, feel free to email me. I'm happy to talk to you about any problems that I've found with it before, or what I've found works or doesn't work. Okay, Answer Garden, if you just Google it, it comes up. It's a really simple way to set up. You can click on Try It Out on the website and it will give you a demonstration. You can leave them open or you can have a password. I've started to use passwords with my students so that they don't give out the link to somebody else in another class and someone does something silly. But I've actually never had a problem with it. On the website, it has some great ideas of how to use them more effectively with your classes and the benefits of them. The whole idea that I see the main benefit is that the first time you do it with them, you are doing a lot of talking to get them through the process. However, after that point, it actually becomes them pulling apart information and learning about what's ahead of them rather than you just telling them. Okay, the next unit is the timelines. Timelines are really important in history because it really gives the students a clear idea of when this happened, where it happened, and what else was going on. When I first started using timelines with students, I found this Reading, Writing, Think organization, and it had a great timeline tool in there. It's basically a fill in the blanks and write information up. When I first start with students, I would simply be giving them a printed out timeline and get them to enter the data in there. You might think, well, what's the point of that? A lot of teachers will put this up on the board or a timeline or construct it via questioning a timeline on the board, and then students write it down in their books. Often if they have messy handwriting or things like that, it doesn't actually mean anything because it's stuck in that book. The thing that gives this power is the ability to compare to events elsewhere. By placing the events in this interactive timeline, even if they are just copying the events from their textbook or from the teacher on the whiteboard, they can produce a set system, and it's clear and it looks neat and tidy. You can then compare this timeline to the next unit's timeline or to the past units. What I will be getting my students to do when they start the Japanese one is comparing the times to that of the medieval and seeing what was going on in England at the same time as what was going on in Shogunate Japan. It gives them a clearer idea. I also resort to paper and get them to post it on our noteboard in our classroom. And when they save the image or when they save this information with this one, because it comes out on a printed page, I get them to post it up. On the next tool, which is in Class Tools Timeline, and if you just click on it or if you just type in Class Tools Timeline, it'll come up in any Google search engine. This one allows you to put images in there and creates a more visual timeline. With this one, I get them to take a screen capture shot at the end of it, and I will upload them into an Ed Studio, or we have a submissions drive where the students can save their work to it. I will generally, in the lesson, get the students to take a screen capture shot of it, save the file as their name, timeline of Shogunate Japan, save it into our submissions drive. I can then copy all of those images and place them into our G drive where students can pull up the images, get them to place the images in a Word document and compare each student's results. It's the power of the discussion, not the creation of the timeline, that is really important at this stage. The next tool, or the next way to enhance this timeline, is to create the timeline or give the students a research project to create the timeline where they have to find key websites for those key events and then get them to use a QR generator for those websites and place the QR images into the timeline so that the timeline then becomes an interactive link to key information about those events by using the websites. That last stage is really for students who have got used to the timeline process, particularly the class tools, because they can't save it and go back into it because Ed Queensland policies prohibit us from logging in and saving their account details in this tool, so they have to create it there and then in that lesson, which gives them a sense of urgency as well so that they're not wasting time, because otherwise they have to do it again. So these are the key things that they need to look at when using these tools. So you get them skilled up in this process and lead them through it and model them through it. And then as they become better researchers, you can let go of that modeling and that highly structured event, and they can start constructing the knowledge in the tool just that little bit better. With my grade 10s, because they've done these tasks before, they're at the stage where I would actually get them to use the QR generator and almost construct a timeline web quest when they start the unit on Freedom Riders, which is the C2C history unit. Okay, what gives these timelines power? It's the discussion. It's not the copying of the information, it's the discovering of the information and comparing it with each other. And this is where the strategy of questioning skills becomes important. And it's important to build the 3 levels of questioning in, just as we have 3 levels of reading: the very basic, the direct, what's seen, anything that could be inferred from it, and then the comparison and evaluation of what this all means. Okay, the last thing, and this comes down to planning responses. Incorporating literacy into history is really important as well. Students need to learn to develop strong connections and write clearly and concisely. What I've found is most students have a great deal of knowledge with regards to the history units, but when they go to express themselves in their assessment pieces or under exam conditions, the way that they answer doesn't fully answer the questions being asked, and they lose marks, or they simply don't give comprehensive enough answers. So this is a structured, and this is a complex structure, and this is something that you will have. I would give a lesson where I use Bubbleos if the children haven't used a mind mapping tool before. I would somewhere give the lesson that of a graphic organizer where they ask the 5 questions and then combine the 2 together. Okay, to do this task you need to make sure that they have the skills for those basic steps first, so you can break it down, or you can model it for the first time the whole way through with the students with a I do as a teacher, they do as a student, until you get to the part where you can release them and they can work independently on their own. I find most students who are particularly visual learners pick this up really quickly. So in my class, I've worked out that with my year 8s that I have a high level of students who are highly literal and can read and comprehend really well, And on the other half, I have very oral learners where they want to listen and need to hear things in order for them to take in the information. So I give them an option. They can either open up the Word document or they can open up the video. Both these resources come directly from the C2C unit and can be found on the learning place if you're unable to access them through one school. I then give them the instruction to go to Bubble Us, and they need to create notes that look like the 5 questions graphic organizer below. Then they take screenshots of Bubble Us and they export their notes. Then for those, and I explain to them that Bubble Us is a mind mapping tool and that it gives them that whole visual, and for students who are visual learners, that they can often take this Bubble Us mind map with components all over the place and put it into a structure. But I also know that in my class I have a number of students are highly lineal and they actually need it in that written point form structure in order for them to put it into a plan. And so then I show them how to export it into the lineal structure in Bubble Us, and then how to transfer that lineal structure so that each of those key points is a PowerPoint slide, so that they can then again transfer the information into a PowerPoint template and add images to support it, so that gives them the chance to research. I give them tools on how to brainstorm and a cheat sheet on how to brainstorm and use Bubble Us. I show them how to export it into a lineal structure, and then what I would do is I would demonstrate one. Because everybody wants to research the emperor and it's probably the easiest person to research, I would demonstrate all the way through and model how I would create a Bubble Us, create a lineal structure, create a PowerPoint, insert images about the emperor. And then I would assign each of them someone else in the structure, or someone else in Japan, an artisan or a peasant or a shogun warrior, and they would have to then go through the same process. So again, modeling, we do a little bit together once I realize that they're getting the information and understanding how to use the task, and then once I feel they've got hold of that and know their expectations, I let them research on their own. It's also a great way of showing them and modelling the process that they'll need to go through for their end of the unit assessment piece. Okay, this is what I would, a visual of how I would go through this process with them. So I model an example, the demo of the emperor. In my case, we're using OneNote at the moment because I don't have a great deal of connectivity in my classroom, and I find using Ed Studios a little bit difficult in the classroom I'm currently in with the students, and so I'm using OneNote, and the students can save it all together in there. We are able to share OneNote by actually saving key pages that I want them to share into our submissions drive, where the students actually have editing rights, and then I can copy it into G Drive where they don't have editing rights, and every other student can pick it up. It means that it's a lot easier and I don't have to wait for the lag time on the internet. It also means that later on in my planning and correction time, I can put the key images and information into the Ed Studio so that they then have access to it online and in their OneNotes. Okay, so I do the modeling. We do once I start asking questions, then they do one group themselves. Then we swap information. Okay, I would get them to put the mind map image into the red box. I would get them to put their lineal structure there and show me their PowerPoint. When they're doing this, I also talk to them about it's about planning, drafting, creating, and then redrafting and finalizing. So they're going through that whole research process. Okay, when I do the we do, I often use a wireless keyboard to assist the students, and I use a lot of questioning in it. Very much, I ask a question, I can give them the wireless keyboard, they can demonstrate to me, the rest of the class can tell the students whether they got it right or wrong. That way, once again, they're leading the conversation, they're leading the learning, I'm just setting the little prompts up along the way. Okay, this is where I'd use a cafe to go at the end to make sure we give more power to this task, where they can pair together. Start off with your expert groups and then move in so that they all get, and everybody then gets information on the feudal system and the key persons or people in the feudal system of Japan at that time. Okay, at the end of the lesson, and obviously this lesson, depending on your students' skills and abilities and the other issues in your class, might actually take 1 or 2 lessons. At the end of the week, so that I can get feedback on how they're going, I might get them to do this, and I might project this up onto the board. It's in an Ed Studio, and I can send you all the links for this information. And it's 3 things that I've learnt this lesson. You might change the word lesson to week, because you might just want to get a feedback once every 3 weeks. You can give the students permission in an Ed Studio so that they can type their answers straight into here. I do find that tends to slow the system down. You could set up a discussion panel in the Ed Studio with these key questions, so you have 3 that pop up and they have to write in 3 things that they've learnt this week or this lesson, 2 questions that they're still not clear on or that they don't understand, and 1 thing that they enjoyed. You then use this information to feed back into the next group of lessons so that you can find out whether they did get the key learning intentions that you'd hoped for them to get, where you need to go back over and rehash a bit more information, and if it's a strategy that you enjoy, it's something that they might implement somewhere else or in another unit of work. If they didn't enjoy it or they didn't get it, you know not to try that strategy, and you move on and find something else that works for those students, or maybe you need to manipulate it in a different way. If you want to do this really quickly, I find I put it up on the screen. I give out little post-it notes, although my students have been told that they need to keep post-it notes on them so they know that we use them. I get them to write it on the post-it notes and then stick them on the right place on the screen. Then at the end of the lesson, I collect it all and I summarize it so that I can utilize the information for a quick feedback. So all the time, you don't have to be totally immersed in the IT, but you can use it as a tool to help you. Okay, so basically our learning intentions today were to look at back channels and wordles, to look at how we could use timeline tools to help students get that continuity of time and place in history that sometimes is missing, particularly when you're doing the SOS as in 1 unit of SOS and 1 unit of history. The mind mapping to create structures. So hopefully these tools have given you some ideas of how to implement ICTs into your classroom. If you have any questions or would like any cheat sheets that I've created or assistance, or like to ask me any questions, please feel free to email me at any time.